Chapter 1059 of One Piece brought in some got to learn more about not only Blackbeard's invasion of Amazon Lily and the Rocky Port incident, but we even finally get the reveal of what the SSG Project is, being new super powerful pacifista. But how exactly did Vegapunk create the Seraphim? Well, we actually already know, so let me explain it for you. Welcome to Chapter Secrets, where we break down all the details in every One Piece chapter. Let's begin. Before we begin the chapter, I'd quickly like to address the chapter cover. As we see, Caesar has helped the Vinsmokes escape, but don't let Oda distract you from the fact that two figures appeared at Cacao Island, and we still don't know who they are. Brule thought they were Ichiji and Reiju and sent Cracker after them, but we know it's actually not them, since Ichiji and Reiju showed up at Whole Cake Island to save their brothers, and the two islands are very far apart. So who are these two figures who Oda is keeping from us really? Anyway, the chapter begins with Marco parting ways with Shanks, telling him that he's tired of babysitting great pirates. This is an important remark because the term great pirate has only been used for really important pirates such as Roger, Whitebeard, or Shanks. But in this case, while Marco could be referring about his time helping Whitebeard, it could also mean that Marco sees Luffy as a great pirate as well, since he came to assist him in the war at Onigashima, which is no short praise. We get a bit flashback where Luffy finally thanks Marco, something he mentioned he's wanted to do ever since chapter 820, and in fact we even see the exact same panel from Marineford we saw in chapter 120 being used here once again. Marco does mention to Jinbe how peculiar it is that back then everyone would move to protect Luffy, which is once again subtly hinting at Luffy's power to be able to draw people to him that has been alluded to so many times, and was made particular emphasis of during the Marineford War. He bids goodbye to Luffy by saying, "From now on, this is you guys' era," a reference to the upcoming new era that has been teased so much in these past few chapters, as Marco heads to Sphinx Island, Whitebeard's hometown that we first saw in chapter 909. We then shift to Amazon Lily, where a great incident took place. Hancock mentions how her presence on the island will endanger her people and mentions how she wants to elope with Luffy. Now this might be played as a gag, but could it actually be setting up future events? Perhaps it's hinting at the idea that Hancock is going to reunite with Luffy and help assist him during whatever final conflict will arise in the series. We however get a better look at what exactly happened on the island, which was right after the abolishment of the Shichibukai system during the Reverie, as we first saw in chapter 956. Leading the charge seems to be Vice Admiral Yamakazi, who was one of the admirals who led the Buster Call on Enies Lobby, if you remember. His name literally means mountain wildfire in Japanese. The marine invasion is however cut short by the Blackbeard pirates, with Teach arriving with 6th and 8th ship Titanic captains, Katarina Devon and Vasco Shot respectively, the former being the first time we've seen him post-Tanskip. Oddly enough, Vasco Shot is still wearing his prison uniform, as he doesn't seem to want to part with it. Devon mentions how she wants to take Hancock's head as a trophy, which is a reference to something that was mentioned in her Viver card, as Devon is someone who likes hunting beautiful women to take their heads as trophies in the name of beauty. Teach meanwhile reveals that he was after the Miro Mironomi fruit, which is the thing he mentioned not wanting to let the Marines have during chapter 956. As we were told at Fishman Island by Jinbe, the Blackbeard pirates have been hunting for powerful devil fruit users to steal their fruits. As it was stated, Teach found a way to attain someone's devil fruit when killing them, which the Ace manga also implied is how he stole the fruit from Thatch, as it implied Thatch had eaten the Yami Yami Nomi, and the only way for Blackbeard to get it was to kill his crewmate. Similarly, he seems to have done the same with Whitebeard, but how he managed to eat a second fruit is a separate mystery entirely. It's unknown if Teach can eat more than 2 fruits, but he has been searching for powerful fruits to give to his subordinates. We saw this with how Burgess tried to get the Mera Mera Nomi and later the Gomu Gomu Nomi in Dressrosa, or how they killed Absalom to give his fruit to Shiryu. During this time, we see Blackbeard clashing against what seems to be a young Lunaria. Blackbeard instantly recognizes the white hair, dark skin and black wings, which isn't surprising given his knowledge of a lot of mysteries in the One Piece world. It's also worth noting that the kid, despite resembling Mihawk, seems to be carrying a spear identical to that of King during his youth, or even the sun god Nika. Meanwhile, Kobe charges into the main plaza of Amazon Lily and asks Hancock to surrender herself. In this shot, we can actually see the picture of Luffy that Hancock hanged on the palace during a cover story, which is interesting since Kobe should no doubt have seen it from this angle angle and recognized it. Though Kira's briefly hinted at this by calling Kobe a hero in chapter 903, it was revealed in Film Red that this is actually an epithet by which Kobe is currently known as he's called Kobe the Hero, which is now being shown in the manga. Film Red also elaborated on the fact that this is an epithet that Kobe earned through saving the people of Rocky Port during the Rocky Port incident, as also Kira's alluded, which was apparently such a big deal that Kobe became famous across the entire world for his bravery and this new title. This is kind of a big deal because it mirrors the God Valley incident where Garp also became the hero of the Marines, which further drives the potential parallel that Kobe could be to Luffy what Garp was to Roger. This, however, builds up further intrigue about what exactly happened at Rocky Port. The Rocky Port incident was a big conflict that took place during the timescape that was orchestrated by Trafalgar Law, and led to a conflict where the people of the port were saved by Kobe. In this chapter, Blackbeard further mentions that Kobe's actions at Rocky Port allowed him to oust Ochoku to take over Hachinosu. So for a little bit of context, Hachinosu, Blackbeard's current base, is the pirate island where the Rocks Pirates first got their start. Ochoku was one of the most prominent members of the Rocks Pirates, whom Sengoku cited among the top members in chapter 957. His name is based on real-life pirate who was also known as Ochoku, or by his other name Wang Zi, which is why you might hear the name being used in some translations, who terrorized China in the 16th century. It would seem this chapter implies that after Shibak's supposed death, his subordinate Ochoku took over Pirate Island as its new ruler, until Blackbeard arrived and stole the position from him to follow in Shibak's footsteps. How exactly the Rocky Port incident factors into this, though, is a whole other story we don't know about. Blackbeard manages to stop Hancock from using her powers by negating it through his Dal Fruit, which, as you might recall, can block the abilities of Dal Fruit users. Kobe also seems to have not been affected, though it's not clear if this is due to having a pure heart like Luffy, or if he simply was fast enough to dodge Hancock's attacks, since Kobe boasts impressive agility at the moment. Also, in the panel in the corner, we can spot a few familiar faces, including Bluefan, Cosmos, Rindo, Ran, Aphalandra, and Daisy. Daisy in particular is overlaid over Blackbeard's Zehahaha bubble, which might be an intentional reference since her laughter is Zahahaha, which fans have often pointed out is really similar to Blackbeard, so Oda could be doing a small reference here. We also get the new bounties of Hancock and Blackbeard, being 1.659 billion belly and 3.996 billion belly respectively. Blackbeard's current bounty feels far more fitting of his status as Yonko, though it makes me wonder just what exactly happened that almost doubled his bounty in the past few chapters. Similarly, Hancock's bounty is nothing to scoff at, and while part of it surely ties into her military power with the Kuja pirates, it also speaks leagues of her strength, as well as her broken Dal Fruit, as she comments how stone statues can only be undone by the original user of the fruit. Blackbeard comments on how dangerous this ability is, which is why he's interested in it, claiming that he doesn't think there's a man alive who could resist her fruit, which is a funny reference to our lovable protagonist. By the way, the last two digits of Hancock's bounty can be read similarly to the two last kana of her name, like Han-go-ku, or 5-9, while the last two digits of Blackbeard's bounty can be read as Ku-ro, or 9-6, or the Japanese word for black, or Kurohige. The two are, however, stopped by Rayleigh, who pulls up on the island to rescue Hancock. As you might recall, Rayleigh and Shakky helped save the Boa sisters after they fled Marijoa during Fisher Tiger's raid, so the bond between them goes way back. Speaking of the latter, we get the reveal that Shakky was actually the former Empress of Amazon Lily, and by extension captain of the Kuja pirates at the time, which actually explains a lot of things. So for a bit of context, while Hancock is the current Empress and Gloriosa was the Empress from 3 generations ago, there was an Empress from 8 generation ago who died of love sickness. Gloriosa mentioned how the Empress before her also had to deal with the burdens of love, and this is where Shakky comes in, as the Empress from 3 generations ago. As it was alluded to in the story and later confirmed by Oda, Shakky and Rayleigh are partners in love, so it seems that Shakky also had to deal with her romantic burdens as she ended up abandoning the island for her love. Both her and Gloriosa sailed back during their days, but while Gloriosa eventually made it back, Shakky never did and retired as a pirate to open up her bar on Sabaody 40 years ago, which, as a reminder, Shakky is currently 64. Let us also not forget that Oda practically implied in an SBS that Shakky was also part of the Rocks Pirates, which is likely the time in which she sailed overseas and likely how she eventually met Rayleigh and ended up falling for him, so she certainly had quite the eventful life. It also lends even more reputation to the Rocks Pirates, as they basically had the equivalent of what was the Hancock of the time among the ranks. Shakky mentions how Vegapunk's stone paddle ships have made Amazon Lily not impregnable anymore, which was something that Gloriosa already mentioned to Hancock during the Amazon Lily arc, and word heard that the marine invasion could become a reality in the future, something that did actually end up happening. Speaking of Vegapunk, we get into what is potentially the biggest deal of the chapter, being the new pacifista weapons, the Seraphim. Rayleigh basically confirms that this is the project that the SSG was working on to replace the Shichibukai that has been teased for so long. Now, for a little clarification, this is something that a lot of people in the fandom get confused about, but the SSG is actually not a project but a group of people, which refers to Vegapunk's research unit, but this detail was lost in some translations, so some people were confused by it. What the Super Saiyan's group is working on, however, is a top-secret project to replace the Shichibukai, and that's where the Seraphim come in, as essentially the replacement of the Shichibukai is very literal, with them being replaced with actual clones of them, just like Kuma was with the first Pacifista model. Now, if you recall, I actually mentioned this in my Return to the Reverie fan manga, stating that the SSG project would be a more advanced model of Pacifista, so let me break it down for you so it's easy to understand. During Whole Cake Island, Yonji mentioned that Vegapunk and Judge made the revolutionary discovery of the Bloodline elements. The Bloodline elements are basically the One Piece equivalent of DNA, the genetic code that forms all living beings. Vegapunk not only discovered this DNA, but even figured out how to copy and replicate it at will. Judge used this technology for his Germa Kingdom to create an army of clones, but Vegapunk applied it differently to copy Devil Fruits. And he clearly succeeded, as he was able to copy a practically perfect copy of the Uonomi model Seiryu, Kaiju's fruit. This is kind of a big deal because it could hint that either A, Devil Fruits contain bloodline element code within them, which could explain how they are able to let people have incredible superpowers by essentially modifying their genetic code, or B, Devil Fruits are actually living creatures that can be cloned, as we have been told they have a will of their own after all. This is also in part how Caesar was able to create Smile Fruits, as Oda elaborated on in an SBS, as they took the bloodline elements from animals and infused them into substance called SAD, which later irrigated trees to provide Smile Fruits, showing how those Zoan powers originated from the bloodline elements of real animals. Even Law at the end of Punk Hazard mentioned how Vegapunk discovering the truth about Devil Fruits has to do with the bloodline elements. And this is where the Pacifista factor in, because it's been pointed out how the Pacifista possess a laser beam that is identical to that of Kizaru's Pika Pika no Mi. So the implication all this time has been that Vegapunk managed to clone the Pika Pika no Mi, or at least an aspect of it, since the Pacifista only possessed part of Kizaru's powers. In this case, he was able to create perfect clones of Kuma, who were also enhanced robots like him, and even gave them some resemblance of Devil Fruit powers through the laser beams. Now, the Pacifista project has taken its next step. Rather than cloning only Kuma, Vegapunk has now managed to clone other Shichibukai, as in this chapter we see clones of both Hancock and Mihawk. The latter's power is particularly terrifying, as it managed to not only defeat many of Blackbeard's elite soldiers without even suffering a single scratch, not only clash against a Yonko, but even sliced the entirety of Amazon Lily in half, an entire island, mind you, a feat that basically rivals those of the real Mihawk. If this is meant to be a clone of the original, just how much weaker is it really from the actual Mihawk? Even further, it seems that Vegapunk has mixed in Lunaria bloodline elements, likely stolen from King during his captivity and seen as his flashback, to make this pacifista even more powerful. After all, the Lunaria were considered to be some of the strongest creatures alive, with really tough skins, wings to fly, and the ability to manipulate fire, which is why some people call them the gods of the god country. And we see through Hancock and Mihawk that they still have the Pika Pika no Mi laser beams from previous pacifista models, so they are literally an amalgamation of all of Vegapunk's scientific successes so far. These incredibly powerful new units have been befittingly named Seraphim, which refers to the most powerful angels of Christian belief, also appearing in Judaist and Islamic belief, which is no doubt in reference to the wings and angelic appearance of these units. This follows the tradition of these units being named after terms that are supposed to bring peace to the world, like pacifista, despite their destructive potential. And this makes you wonder if the government would stop at just cloning the Shichibukai, or if they could even clone others they've captured before, such as Kaido. Since they have already cloned his fruit, who's to say they can't clone the entire beast? This does makes me wonder, however, if this cloning is limited to those they have been able to extract bloodline elements from in the past. After all, Hancock was captured as a kid by the world nobles, so they could have gotten her bloodline elements during that time, which might explain why this Seraphim Hancock is a little kid. That does beg the question of if they somehow had captured Mihawk as a kid as well, though, or if they potentially could even make clones of people who they don't have their bloodline elements for, though I'm not sure exactly how that would work. And who is to say that they can't just limit themselves to just one clone or two? We saw with the pacifista where they were able to create several Kuma, although numbers were limited due to the sheer cost of creating one of these pacifista, with Centauro mentioning how a single one of them cost as much as a marine battleship, but still, imagine an army of Mihawks. That is one terrifying thought. Regardless of how it evolves, however, there is no doubt that the Seraphim Pacifista will play a big role in the story to come.